dump that through. I think I got everything else sort of set up here. Hopefully I don't sound tinny anymore.
Well, it doesn't sound like a $1,000 mic, but it's clear. It's loud and clear, so we're good with that.
Yeah. I didn't bring one of those with me, sorry.
That's fine. Most people don't have that in their back pocket. I gotta get me some acoustics in here. I still hear some echo.
Yeah, he needs some panels.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey, before we start, how do you pronounce your last name? Is that PROCENKO? PROCENKO?
Yeah, PROCENKO. You got it right.
PROCENKO. Good.
Yep.
Whatever. I mean, this is the kind of podcast where you can goof off and.
It's all great.
Well, we're back. Oh, before I forget, if you're enjoying this podcast, press pause now. Go ahead and share it on social media and let your friends enjoy it too. The more, the merrier. On this episode, we're going to Toronto to have a chat with one of the coolest lighting guys I know. And I'm not just saying that because he has orange hair. Fox PROCENKO has pretty much done it all, from tour buses to planes to movie sets, you name it. Oh, and before we start, I've been getting emails asking where I got the podcast opening theme music. Not. Just kidding. Nobody gives a shit about the music. But hey, it's my podcast, so I'm gonna play it anyway. The Backstage Cowboys podcast is brought to you by AVL Media Group and Avolights, who make the best lighting consoles in the world. If you live in Canada, you now have access to the Avolights Academy online learning platform. The cost is $229, and that includes an editor Avo key delivered directly to your door. Head on over to BackstageCowboys.com and click on the Avolights Academy logo to get all the details. Now, if you don't live in Canada, well, that means you're in another country. So if you're in the United States, head on over to avolights.us. Anywhere else in the world, just go directly to avolights.com and you'll find all the resources available in your country. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is another episode of the Backstage Cowboys podcast. Hit it! I think this is the first time we actually speak live, right?
Yeah, I think we've been talking over email for like almost a year now, but I haven't actually spoken to you live. Everything's either been through Facebook or through an email process.
Yeah, that's right. So, how you doing, man? How you surviving all this crappy stuff we're having?
I'm waiting. It's literally right now. It's a lot of waiting for the phone to ring.
Are you guys shut down right now, or?
Yeah, we're shut down until they just announced this morning that 31st of January. Wow, is when they're going to reopen venues to 50% capacity, and then full 100% capacity if everything holds by March 14th. Wow. So live is still kind of in the gutter as far as work. Excuse me, but film is basically about to ramp up. They've got 6 productions going to camera in February and another 6 in March and April. So there's lots of film work that's going to pop up in the meantime. At least it should be.
Well, that's good. At least you guys have a date. We don't know anything yet. We have a press conference at 2 p.m. We'll see what the hell goes on with that. But I don't know.
Did they release you guys as lockdown? Yeah.
Yeah, we're a total lockdown. Everything's shut down now. I mean, they just removed the curfew last week.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we're hoping. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So, I try to avoid the topic of COVID because, you know, it's
a bummer, for sure.
It's a bummer. It's been covered left and right, up and down. So,
yeah. Don't have to
talk about
it.
good times, man. So, so you're a light guy, obviously.
Yeah.
So, what do you do right now? I mean, I see that you're working on all sorts of stuff. You're doing film, corporate events, bands, tours, whatever.
Above? Nothing touring. I wish I was touring again. I sort of miss falling asleep on a tour bus or in the back of a van. I've been doing a lot of film, and then when we had our brief shining moment of events recently last year in the last quarter, I picked up my old position at the museum just to sort of help them get some events out the door and produce some events there. I was also house teching at the Phoenix Concert Theatre here in Toronto because they needed somebody. Independent is a couple of commercial shoots. I ended the year the same way I started it, with a live stream from. We were supposed to be at History, but of course COVID. So when we all got shut down at the end of December, we moved back to the band's rehearsal space and produced another live stream with obviously lighting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been involved. And yeah, I was very fortunate. I'm very, very thankful that I dipped my toe into film. September 2020. And then I've sort of been off and on. And then last year I spent a lot of time in film while we were waiting for live to come back. And then when live did come back, I sort of had one foot in one door and one foot in the other, and kind of took the best of both worlds while we're waiting for touring to come back. I mean, Canada's a hard market for touring anyway, right? Because of in the States, you have so many like pockets of markets where you can just, like, it's a 4-hour drive and you've got another set to play to, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in Canada, if you're not in the Golden Horseshoe around Toronto, or like within driving distance of Montreal or Quebec City, like it's the string of markets is harder to justify a tour, especially with the current environment.
Yeah, well, even within Quebec, I've toured Quebec a lot, and I mean, 11-hour drives, that happens.
Yeah.
And and going to places where that are only accessible by plane. That happened too. I remember this time where we left Montreal, we went to Sept-Îles, landed there, and then we left Sept-Îles to go to Fermont. And before we left Sept-Îles, it was a snowstorm. It was really, really rocky. And the pilot says, well, okay, there's a big storm in Fermont. We're not sure we're going to be able to land, but we'll try.
Oh, great.
So I asked the flight attendant, I said, what does he mean we'll try? Well, she says, we're going to try and get there, and once we're there, if they can land, then they will. If they can't, we'll just turn around and come back here. I said, why don't we just stay here? Because if I'm going to get stuck somewhere, I'd rather be in Sept-Îles than Fermont.
Right, exactly.
Fermont, it's a mining village. I mean, there's a big wall. Everything's in the wall. Everybody lives in the wall. Everything's in the wall. So right. I mean, you don't want to get stuck there. So anyway, nope. We made it.
I'm glad you made it. Yeah, it's... I remember flying up to one of the indigenous reserves north of Winnipeg, and we literally had to take a way to fit everything in a small, like, 7-seater plane, like all the band's backline, all the all the extra equipment they'd rented from, like, whoever in Winnipeg all had to go into the back of this plane. It was interesting, and yeah, we flew up to basically the middle of nowhere. Luckily it was summertime, but still, like, there's only way in and out of this native reserve is by plane. Like, you can't drive there. Wow. They all have cars, but you can't drive there, which I thought was really weird and interesting.
Well, that's the country we live in. There's inaccessible places that we need to go to.
Yep, it's true.
Tell me, when you're the films you've been doing lately, are you, like, strictly board op, or are you involved with other stuff like setting up and whatever?
I had a couple of different hats I was wearing. When I started on the first film I did, we did up north in Sudbury, was Fixation, and I was the board op and sort of like a dimmer systems tech as well, just to make sure, because we had like 120 Titan tubes all doing a whole bunch of stuff. Like, it was a very sophisticated setup for a film shoot. Mm-hmm. In an abandoned hospital in Sudbury. And we did, so I was like system designer and the board operator for the show, and for the entire run of the film. And then when I came back to Toronto, I filled in as a board operator on a couple shows. I was the rigging board operator for Umbrella Academy, which is a rigging board operator is a position that exists to basically be the systems tech. You basically make sure that all the GMX works, and you have control of everything in the set via practicals or whatever.
Okay.
And then I moved to a new show because I was bumped because I'm not a member of the union. So I, yeah, I was on Umbrella for about 3.5 months, and then I moved to a new show called Mayor of Kingstown, where I then became. I was supposed to be the next board operator when the original guy, his wife was due, so I was supposed to take his position, and then the gaffer asked me to take care of the Kingston Pen project, as we called it, because a good half of that show was shot in Kingston Penitentiary, which is now a decommissioned prison. That's open for tours as a museum, but you also can film there. So I spent about, over the course of the 6-month run, I think I spent 2 months total in like 3 weeks or 4 week snippets in Kingston, Ontario, just setting up and making sure, supervising the setup and ensuring that everything worked well in the prison. Like not retrofitting, but we basically took out every fluorescent tube that we were shooting in and put an Titan tube in. I think my full count by the end was 437 Titan tubes.
Wow.
I took the position of rigging gaffer, which is basically the guy who, if we're looking at non-film nomenclature or verbiage, we would talk about. The rigging gaffer is basically the person in charge of setting up and tearing down all of the electrical or lighting equipment on a given set. The rigging gaffer's crew is in charge of making sure when we go to locations that we set up adequate power, we have everything ready so that the shooters can come in and just shoot, and we set it up and tear it down. So it's like half management and half planning kind of deal. So, and because of my experience at the museum and my experience in the AV industry and corporate, and the gaffer thought I was a good choice for it, and I did it for an entire season. So
cool.
Which is very rare.
You say you're not a member of the union, but what's the criteria? I mean, I used to be I was a member. They called it permissionnaire. I had like a permit.
Yep,
or a temporary member or whatever, but it was Actis in Quebec before it merged into IA. But so what's the criteria? I mean, what do you need to do to be a full-time member?
So they want 120 days on IA, like shows.
Okay.
First of all, then you need 3 character references, and then you have to go through a membership screening process where they look at your dates, they look at all your resume and stuff, and then it gets voted on at the meeting. There were a few of us left. Now, they also only let in a certain amount of members in each block, so I didn't make the block last time, but I suspect this time I'll be all right. There was a number of people that were rather upset that I didn't make it last time, so their voices were heard, and I feel like I just reapplied, actually, because the next run, I believe, is in April.
Okay.
So yeah, it basically comes down to numbers. Like they can't let in, because film, especially in Toronto, is like, it's usually like an 8 months thing, or then a 4 months of dryness, or 4 months of like less work. So they don't want to have like 1,000 electric members and then have all those people sitting at home.
Yeah.
For 4 months.
Yeah, it makes sense. Of course. Yeah, I should have signed up. It's a funny thing because here in Quebec it was Actis, and then the local 514 was born, and IA started, making their way into the movie industry in Montreal, and I was on the Death Race shooting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they were going around recruiting people. So I could have signed up at that time, and the problem is I was at the other end of the set, which was like half or 3/4 of a kilometer, all throughout all the buildings, and I had like an office on the second floor. I was really, even Kraft couldn't find me, and they didn't find me, obviously, so I never got a chance to become a member that day. I wish I had, but anyway. today.
Programmers are harder now in the union. It was a weird thing to move from live entertainment into film. I've had a number of people in the film union who have been saying, no, you have to join. And I was always too busy. But then when there wasn't work, all of a sudden there was. They're about, in my thought process, I don't want to say 5 years behind, but like the idea of up until about 5 years ago in Toronto, maybe 6, we anytime they needed someone with sophisticated programming for DMX consoles, it was they would hire a production company, like whether it be Westbury, Apex, Christie, PRG, whoever, who would come with a tech with the board to program. I did it on Degrassi a number of times and a bunch of other stuff in my early career where I was on a film shoot and I was the specialist, as they called me, right?
Yeah.
And then
that was outsourced.
It was outsourced.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it was 5 or 6 years ago, because I think everyone I've talked to in the union has told me that Suicide Squad was the show that they realized that they could have a piece of that pie. So they started getting their own operators, right? Or like a couple of the people who were operators in 873 were like bought Grand MAs and bought consoles, and then they started training some people, and other people filtered in from other like live avenues, and then they started building up a system of board operators. But board operating is different in a film set than it is in live. Because the person at the board in live is the one in control. On a film set, you are data entry. You're
just waiting for instructions. That's it.
You're hundreds of fixtures at hundreds of intensities at hundreds of color temperatures. Record, save. The only time that you're really creative is if you show the gaffer something and he decides, or he or she decides, I want to put that in the show.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's never. You are not in control. You are just data entry. And that's what a lot of the moving light programmers I know who have done live, who came into film for the past year, are just like, I hate it. I hate just sitting here and putting numbers in. There's nothing to do, because there isn't. Like once the camera rolls, you're not, unless there's a gag that happens during the shot, you're sitting there.
Yeah.
It's good money, but you're just data entry.
You need to invest in a comfy chair. Which is the
$300
chair I'm sitting on right now. Actually, I bought it for what was it? Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I bought the one I'm sitting on. I bought after fixation. It's this like portable.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's a $40 chair that I got on Amazon, and it is the comfiest thing ever. I use it when I'm programming. The chair I sit in when I'm programming at home, because it's just like, it's nice and comfy. It's low to the ground.
I feel old. I feel old because when I started doing movies, we didn't have Amazon. So. Or maybe it was there, but it just wasn't a thing at the time, you know.
I had someone, I think it was last year when I was on the set. I was making cracks. I'm like, oh man, I've been programming moving lights and moving light consoles for, oh Jesus, 16 years. Oh no.
How old are you?
I'm 40.
40? You don't look it.
Yeah. No, it's because I dye my hair. Makes me look younger. You can't see all the white. And I keep cleanly shaven too. Yeah, I've been programming. Like I started on a Hog 2 on a cruise ship.
Oh,
in
my favorite.
2004. Yeah, I'm partial. I never forget the use of being on a Hog. Yeah, I started with Hog, and then I moved on into Avo and then MA and as down the line. But yeah, my first operating gig was in an ice rink on a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean.
When was that?
2004.
Okay.
So it would have been around this time in 2004, actually, because I was like most of the way through my first contract on a Royal Caribbean ship, and the guy left, and I got promoted internally, and because I was training to be, like I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I can't believe it's like 16, 17 years ago. That's
how tough was that?
Flies.
I mean, when you got your hands on a Hog for the first time, was it like in a situation where you had a show going on, or did you have time to play with it before, or how was the learning curve on that board?
I had shadowed the two lighting techs we had, the one that was my predecessor in the studio, and the one in the theater. So I was signed on the ship as a stagehand, and then I basically spent most of my time when I wasn't scheduled to work as a stagehand. I was shadowing the two lighting techs, learning how to fix like Mac 500s and Mac 600s and PAL 1220s and cyber lights and huge 9 light blinders with Wyron color scrollers. Like I learned all of these things while we were at sea on the ships.
More mechanics than electronics at that point.
But also things, yeah, all like stepper motors and stuff. But once I got like, and the console too, like learning things about how it does things. And most of the shows on the ships are time coded, which makes it a little bit easier for a learning environment. Because once the tape syncs up, the console does what it's supposed to do, and you call follow spots. But for shows where you had to be creative on your own, it gave me that environment to be like, okay, well, it's just a kid's skate, so the lights can do whatever I want them to do, except massive strobing. So here's how you program cues. Here's how tracking works. Here's how HTP versus LTP works on a Hog console. And I mean, I did go to school for theater, so I knew a bunch of the basics from like an ETC console, but like learning moving light consoles and how moving lights worked and how you recorded things was a bit of a curve, but you get there.
Yeah. Did you ever use Synergy? Light Synergy on a movie set or anywhere else for that matter?
No. The closest thing to using on a movie set I would have used I used Resolume Arena, and then I had a Catalyst back in the old days when we were doing like if we had to do video stuff, it was through Catalyst or a Maxidia or Mbox. I can't remember. Mbox, that's the one that PRG has. Yeah, media server is a media server is a media server, but not the Synergy. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, well, that's what's fun about Synergy is when you we did a test at Mel's where we had those panel lights. What the hell are they called? The ARRI
Sky panel.
RGB, and we just ran video through them because the guy said, wow. Well, when you have a burning building and they're not shooting on green screen anymore, they're shooting on actual landscape with LED panels, and then the DOP calls the shot and says, okay, I want a fire effect, and it's got to be synced with what's going on, like the burning building and the explosion and all that. And
so you just looped in the video.
And then you say, well, I need time to program, and there's never any time to program, right? So they need the effect now. So this thing is like a no-brainer. You just run the video, the same video that's running on your background, you run it through your lights.
Yeah.
And you sit back and everything's synced and you don't have to worry about it.
Use your fire effect.
Yeah.
It'll ask you to change a couple of colors, maybe change the red or the green value to match, and then they're off they go. Yeah. I have not had the opportunity to do that yet. Last time we did a fire effect, it was we did it old fashioned with a whole Parcan rig on the back of a truck. I think I still have a photo. Let me see if I can put this up. It was to the gaffer's credit, it made a whole lot of sense, but I've never. Did I not take a photo of it? Oh, no, I gotta find it. I'll find it for you. But basically, it's take the back of a pickup truck. The grips put pipe all around, and then we like horizontally mounted 7 bars of 6 all around the back of the truck, and then a big dimmer and fired them in we pixel mapped 48K of pars basically.
That still works.
How we described it.
Yeah, it still works. I mean, pars are pars.
Oh yeah, it still worked.
I remember we were simulating a bus accident, and it was actually one guy with a spot in his hand running towards the camera, and it worked.
The magic of film. It doesn't look like it's going to work until it does, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how you started. You said you were on a cruise ship. How old were you at the time? I mean, I got dates in my head, but it's your first gig.
That would have been 2004. So that's 18 years ago now. 22.
Okay.
23, I think, when I started. Because I literally finished university and went on a ship. I finished university in May, or April, May, of '03, and then I was on a cruise ship by October.
So, what did you study exactly at university?
I went to Dal for technical sonography, so which is basically technical theater. And my focus was lighting and stage management when I was there. So this is kind of where I guess I ended up. Yeah, Dal is in Halifax. That's where I'm from.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're from Halifax. Okay.
And then I moved. Yeah, I moved to Toronto after the ships in 2006, and I kind of stayed here because that's where all the work is.
Yeah.
I've toured back home with bands a few times, but I've been home. I used to go every once in a while when we were touring a lot, but now it's a little bit less. My mom moved up here too, so
Okay.
we're all living in Toronto now. Although with the housing prices, I might want to move back.
Well, that's. I mean, now that you tell me you're in what? You're how close are you to downtown Toronto where you live?
I'm at Wilson and Jane, so 20-minute drive downtown.
Oh, that's close.
Yeah, like I'm still in Toronto, so
Yeah.
but I'm in North York. But yeah.
But I'm guessing that the paycheck is according to the area, right? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, in film, it definitely is. In film, there's a lot of money to be made in film, which is great. Live, it's getting better. It is getting better with the pandemic and the changes that happened because so many AV companies, went out of business and so many people moved on to different career paths or left the business, so to speak. When we came back, I discovered this in September when we came back to doing live events. Finding people, like quality people, was difficult, and things just cost more to get the right people you need, right? So our pay scale in live is slowly getting up to where it's tolerable. Before the pandemic, I would say that it was not great, but since then, now everyone's sort of banded together and said, no, I don't want to we're not working for less than this much.
mm-hmm.
Which has made the quality of life gone up a little bit. People aren't scrounging around for 4-hour calls anymore.
Well, it has to. I mean, I'm on the south shore of Montreal, so housing up until recently was extremely affordable, and I noticed that because from going to Toronto and going to Vancouver and looking just for fun,
yeah.
just looking at the listings, and you'd get like this semi-detached, falling apart house for 1.5 million, with a very, very small lot. And I figured, oh God, I mean, you can get that for 150 in Montreal or suburbs of Montreal. Recently, I just freaked out. I mean, I've got neighbors that sold their houses, and I just freaked out when I found out how much they got for them because it just and we figured it was coming.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that I've been the owner of a house since '88. So
wow.
took a while before it went up, but now I guess it's really worth it. But I can just imagine. I mean, if you're new in the market, you're just arriving in Toronto and you're shopping for a house. I mean, what are your chances?
Not really that great. I mean, we're renting a house right now, which is not so bad, but it's still like the market here is really, really expensive. It's very. I think the average price I saw on the internet yesterday was like $1.5 million. Like $1 million is the average price right now. Toronto's been in a housing bubble for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's eventually when it like here in Vancouver burst, it's going to be a whole lot of pain for a whole lot of people that have like $1 million mortgages. But yeah, there's the influx of people who are buying homes as investment but not living in them or renting them out is causing has kept our housing prices high.
Uh-huh. Yep, that's one thing.
But yeah, I mean, we'll try to move out of the city once, we'll see how this year goes and see how the lease, like our lease is still for another year and a half. So once we get to the end of that, we'll reevaluate whether we're going to move out of the city or if we've got enough away to do a down payment. But like it is, I mean, at least we're not in a condo anymore. We moved during the pandemic because the dog got a lot bigger than he was when he was, as he grew, he grew exponentially. So what was a small puppy became a very large teenager. and he now we got a yard for him, so
Oh, that's
that's
good.
helpful.
That's good. Yeah, especially if you have kids. I mean, you need
Yep.
space to room. Space to space to
Room to
move.
space. Yeah,
Space to move.
room to
Yeah.
space to move, room to
Yeah.
breathe.
I say
all
that.
works.
I say this during every interview. I'm a French guy. I think in French and I speak in English. So sometimes
That's
it comes
fine.
out funny. So
It's fine.
so what are your plans for the future? I mean, okay, so you're doing film. You're doing corporate or whatever. I mean, do you have plans to settle down in one particular niche, or are you just, taking whatever passes by?
I mean, I honestly didn't think this is where I would be. I mean, when the company I was working for went into receivership, it kind of and the pandemic as well gave a whole lot of perspective on, well, what do I want to do? And in doing film, I can't ever stop doing live music. Doing lights for a band is the most satisfying thing.
Yeah.
I can't not do it. And so every opportunity I have, I do that. I kind of feel like the next little I'm gonna continue doing both for now. To go back to being a lighting designer for bands and doing stuff in film, because it's been good. I've been really happy at work. There are a few corporate clients that I still have really good ties with, the museum being one of them, and a couple of other corporate clients that I worked with through Westbury that I'm still going to maintain relationships with, that I might production manage for them, or in previous incarnations I had been sort of the person they go, we may get AV from somebody else because we're nowhere near you, but can we have you come supervise them?
Yeah.
So it's a mix of AV consultant work / production management, and then doing lights for bands and film sets. It's kind of where I'm sitting right now, and I'm gonna ride that line until something new and interesting pops up.
Yeah, speaking of new and interesting, in all those years you've been doing lights, I'm pretty sure you must have a couple of anecdotes or funky stories, things, weird things, funny things.
Oh man.
I just triggered something there, eh?
There's a lot of them. Wow. Where do I start? Okay. 2008 was my second cross-country tour with the winners of Canadian Idol. So that was the year with the last year they did it, actually. So that would have been oh my god, how do I forget their names? That was Drew, Mitch, and Theo. There we go. Theo won. Mitch McDonald was second, and Drew Wright was third. Our stage manager, a guy named Flavio Monopoli, used to tease me incessantly every night that he would say, no one ever leaves humming the light show. And then about a week in, and he and the guitar tech would text me during the show and say, oh, I really like that light look. Oh, wow, you missed that cue. Like that kind of thing. We had this back and forth. And then he got really sassy when we were getting on the bus, and he turned around and said to me, well, no one leaves humming the light show, Fox. I said, well, Flav, without me, it's just radio. And everyone stopped, and then we all had a really good laugh about it. I tour manage a band called Platinum Blonde, which I'm sure
I've heard of.
Many people have heard of, especially if you're from Canada. And I have several amazingly hilarious stories about that band. One of my favorite classic ones is so typically when you're touring with a band, you show up to the airport 3 hours early because you've got guitars you're flying and all your gear. So it was a particularly busy day that day at Pearson, and I believe we had a huge amount of issues with Air Canada that day with the amount of stuff we had, and some of it was overweight. We were flying to Winnipeg, actually, to play at McPhillips Station Casino, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this would have been Yeah, 2012, 2011, 2012. And so it took like 2 hours to get through the process of like from grabbing our boarding passes, from paying for overweight, getting all the stuff through oversized, and through security. Because this is before Nexus,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have a Nexus card, so that meant we were like in long lines. And I think we got through security with about 10 minutes before they started calling boarding. And Mark decides, well, I've got to eat, mate. I can't get on the plane without eating. So he goes to the restaurant next to the gate and orders lunch. I think it was lunch at that point. So I go in with him, obviously, and I didn't order anything. He ordered a whole slew of food that he was going to get to take out. And so like 10 minutes goes by, they start calling everyone's name. Or they start calling the first boarding, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, we got lots of time. We got lots of time. But it took that restaurant like, must have been like 35, 40 minutes because everybody else was on the plane and they were about to close the doors. And I'm like, Mark, we got to go. Like the plane's going to leave without it. He's like, no, I can't get on without my food. And I'm like, I'm watching my watch. I'm watching over there. Finally, the food comes out because I already paid for it, right? And I felt really bad, but I'm like, this is the worst. And so we book it out of the restaurant as they're closing the door. And I'm like, well, we're there. And they're like, we've been calling you for 20 minutes. Where have you been? And Mark's like, oh, I had to get food. And then we walked on the plane. And I was like, I sat down, like hands in my knees, just like, oh my god, the rest of the band and the crew were on the plane. Like, where the fuck were you? Or like, Mark had to get food. Like, you're kidding? I'm like, no, not kidding. And we got Mark's like, I had to eat, and we're just like, oh my god, I can't. Yeah, I have thousands of stories from touring with that band. I have been touring with that band since 2011.
Are they still active?
Yeah. We did a couple shows last year.
Cool.
When we got to the 3, which isn't so bad, and then we have a bunch on the like when everything opens up again, back on the road again. But yeah, we were doing, I want to say like 20 to 30 shows a year. Last like before the pandemic.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I met Mark working at his club. He actually interviewed me for the job at his club. I worked at Mod Club here in Toronto for 2 years, like 2009 to 2011. And Mark was Ryan Campbell, who is also known as Stumpy, was the house tech there. He's now with City and Color and the Arkells and big bands. But he's the one that recommended me to Mark. And so I like sat to go do an interview with this guy who I didn't even remember being a child of the 80s, I should have known who he was, but he looks so drastically different from the guy you'd see in a Platinum Blonde video. So I didn't even realize who he was until after, like way afterwards. And I remember he was an hour and a half late for the meeting. I was like right after the Mod Club, like I guess his car had trouble or whatever. He kept texting me saying, oh yeah, I'll be there shortly. And I'm literally sitting there for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, what's going on? And this British dude walks in and talks to me about lighting and talks to me about, what he expects. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll try it out for a couple of days. Let's see how this is. And then I ended up doing 2 years there. He's the only person, like one of the only artists, sorry, not one of the only artists. I've worked with a few artists, but he's the one that is one of the most particular about how the lights have to look. It was the same way when he DJ'd at the club. It had to be like your lights had to be always in time with the music. Doesn't matter what song it is, you need to be there. And I thought I was a hotshot lighting programmer before I worked at Mod Club. And then I learned that I was not a hotshot as good as I thought I was. But in my 2 years of working there, and to his credit, which I know I saying this on air and I normally wouldn't, but to his credit, I became a better lighting person because of him, because of his insistence of, no, this is what looks good. You don't want to do this. Like abstract concepts like, why is it so bright on stage? Things like, everyone, like, why, there's nothing wrong with just a silhouette of backlight. Like there's like, you don't need front light to achieve the means. Like he had all these like we did all sorts of crazy stuff from confetti cannons to CO2 and all these like weird like strobe flowers and all sorts of strange things during his DJ sets just to like make it look interesting.
Yeah,
I would have never have thought of lighting a mirror ball in yellow and dropping bubbles on the crowd. That would have never come up in my head when I'm doing lights to an Oasis tune. And yet, like, just things that I guess as an artist that he is in a music, like a musician, an artist, they see things differently. So like I would have never thought of some of these concepts, and now I'm like, oh, and now like some of them is just things I have in my programming in the back of my head of like this look or like this thought process of like when you go to something like if it's like some sort of a cappella voice thing, you go to like solid white spots from behind and nothing else, like swapping to like using darkness as my filler as my texture as opposed to using light. I would have never thought of that without doing thousands of DJ nights for Mark.
Wow.
And now I'm
so this guy knows what he wants. He's got the creative eye, and that's
and
great.
timing is important, right? And that's the thing.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, that's DJ Link. Have you tried it?
No, I haven't ever needed to. I haven't been. Sorry, I'll say I haven't had the chance to be in a club with the DJ Link to try it.
Yeah, I haven't tried it either, but it seems to, well, you're basically just sucking the BPM out of whatever's playing.
You're just pulling the BPM and the not time code essentially. Well, you could with timeline now. You could time code it.
Yeah, but time code doesn't really mean anything. I mean, you need to have the beat, and time code doesn't necessarily give you the beat of what's playing.
Nope, but time code will give you like the song length, and like you could program. If you knew the song really well, you could program based on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's there's all these new fancy toys you can try to do stuff with. It's just a matter of having the application to do it in, and the time to program it. Right. It's really, you want to spend like a couple of days with the rig just to fine tune and build something, right?
Yeah.
If you build like have a week of pre-prep or something in a space where you can go, this is the package I'm taking on tour. I can program my thousands of lighting cues that are being picked up off of by a timeline where I can just go set macro 1, start the set list and go that way, and then have momentaries or bumps for when you want to accent stuff, but have the basic of your show run, and then you can override to do extra stuff on top of it. But that, again, layering and that sort of time, you can do a lot of that in some level of pre-res and capture, but it's not the same as like sitting in the room with it, right?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, simulation is one thing. I think simulation gets you, allows you to get the basics down, but the real creativity is on the spot. It's how you feel it. It's, there's a lot of stuff that happens that is not technical. It's a feeling. Yeah. And I think that Mark had it when he said that, backlighting is okay without necessarily key lighting. And I've always been like a big fan of that, like doing weird stuff, and it all depends on, who's on stage. And who's watching, who's on stage. Is it the crowd that's watching, or is it cameras that's watching? So
it's always really interesting besides the band too. I mean, like Platinum Blonde was 3 people, right? I mean, we were 5 in the beginning, then back down to the original 3 when we started touring the Staying in the Dark record, the 30th anniversary. But like Dwayne Gretzky, the band I did my live stream for, and the band, they're a cover band. Like they're a 15-person cover band, or 21 up to 21 people when we did the 2000 show. So they're a big band, and obviously, you have to keep that in mind. There's 4 singers, and they all play different instruments. They move around. Some of the singers play guitar. Some of the singers play bass. Some of them, they play percussion or keys. So being able to adapt on the fly and see where they're going, and then like have lights focused on the correct people, or like the correct solos in each of the random songs they're playing. It's challenging, but also That's where simulation actually helps. Like for all the shows that I've pre-programmed, all I'm doing at home is basically setting value colors for each song. I'm building effects that I know I'm going to update, but having all of the stuff, everything but positions built, so that when I go in, I go, positions go here. I don't like how that translated actually on the fixtures. I don't like how that looks. Okay, I'm going to change that. I'm going to do this. So I feel like simulation or like capture and previs gives you like 65% of the homework, and then you get to the venue and 45 is finessing and making it go.
Yeah.
And then the good thing about being on tour, the thing that you miss about being on tour is after you're in a rhythm on the tour, you show up, you load in your floor package, the stuff you've programmed your whole show for, and then you dump in the actual the house rig if you want, or aspects of it, and then you just update the show consistently every day.
Yeah, you're basically updating positions.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's fun when you're able to get something down synchronized and just move it from venue to venue. Oh, that's cool. It takes a while to get it right, but once it's all up and running, man, it's a pleasure.
Oh yeah, it's everything.
Yeah, because then you can have fun. You don't have to, it's. That's cool.
The best 90 minutes of the day is the show, from start to finish. The house lights coming down and the band walking on stage to the end of the encore is the best part of the day.
Yeah,
and all that is the focus.
Yeah, that and the beer after the truck has been loaded.
Oh yeah, truck beers are a thing for sure.
That's not too bad either.
No, I absolutely.
And I say that, and probably I go right to bed, at my age. But because I used to be, I used to enjoy it very much, and I realized that my last touring years, I was pretty quiet, and we'd be two guys sharing a room. And I'd let the sound guy have the desk, so he put his laptop there, and I'd take the ironing board and spread it across the two beds, and that would be my desk. Huh. And that worked.
I haven't seen the ironing board trick. That's new. You learn something every day. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
Because I get the comfy chair.
Oh, okay. You grab the comfy chair and you put it in between. Oh, yeah.
Okay. You move, you got to move furniture around.
You got to move furniture around, for sure.
Yeah, you set up the room the way you want it, and then you're good for the night. Say, funky question. Have you had, these newcomers, newbies, technicians, have you had a lot of them come up to you and ask you questions and try to get information and ask you about how you got to where you are now and what they can do? Passionate people who want to learn. Have you ever had these people come up to you?
All the time, actually. Which I'm actually very, very thankful for. One of the things I really enjoy and have enjoyed in the past while, when I go on tour or when I'm touring into different venues. I have my reputation of, because I toured with July Talk and Platinum Blonde and Serena Ryder and a bunch of other bands, my quartz here. So I'm the guy that shows up with a quartz and goes, oh yeah, you just put that in my way. I don't want to use that. I want to use this. And they look at me with this like, what are you doing? And I go, well, it's okay. You'll see. We'll swap consoles at the end, when I go on, but don't worry about it. But I always, when I meet someone in a new city or whatever, and I'll ask them things like, if it's a hog 4, I'm like, oh, do you know how to do this on this console? And if they say no, my response is, would you like me to show you? Right? So I've spent a lot of my time, and more recently, being a lot more open book about basically anything. And if you don't know how to do something, or someone sees me do something, like, well, how did you do that? I'm like, oh, I did it this way. This is how you do that. To give them that grain of knowledge and that like tips to make them better programmers. Or if someone asks me advice, then I'm like, okay, well, here's how you get. I mean, I fell into a lot of my touring through relations of people I know, or people were like, well, I'd be cool to have that guy on the bus because he's pretty cool. Like he's not going to be somebody I don't want to hang out with, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like technical expertise, like explaining how to think about your layout, right? How your console is laid out and why you lay it out that way. Knowing why the board is doing something, or if you push the button the wrong way, why it didn't do something, right? So I do a bunch of I do mentoring here in Toronto a lot. And I just actually did a phone call with a buddy of mine who used to be one of letting he's now out west in Vancouver, but he's running a Grand MA course, and he had questions about, well, what advice would you give to people like just learning? I'm like, okay, well, here are the things to set up and think about, because for a corporate show you need a ballyhoo, a podium special, and a couple of looks.
Yeah. Here's
what you think about. Find out what the color and branding colors are for the client. Have a podium look. Have a slow ballyhoo if you need it. Like things that you'll always need. Like have a cool gobo look for the ceiling, or a walk-in look. Just things to think about to have in your back pocket, so that they're already programmed. So when someone comes to you and goes, "Oh my God, doors are in 5 minutes," you go, "Okay, lights are on, we're good to go," and then you can just be calm and collected about it. So yeah, advice-wise, I get asked for advice all the time, and I give advice, hopefully good advice, to people of what they should do if they're interested or they want to move forward in their career, or how to do that. But basically, it comes down to punctuality and attitude. Always be 15 minutes early for the call. No one's waiting on you. You're always there early, and always have a good attitude. Don't be the person who complains about everything. You're gonna have terrible gigs where either you're pulling tons of feeder, or you get someone didn't order the right bit to make things happen. Like you got a bunch of 3-pin fixtures and all you got was 5-pin data. It's gonna happen. But be creative, figure out a way to make it go. People are gonna remember that. Also, people are gonna remember if you're an asshole all the time, just not what you want. You'll get farther being the good person who helps everybody out. And not at your own expense. Obviously, do your job first. But if you find yourself with some time and someone needs a hand, you give them a hand.
Yeah.
And that will get you farther in life than it will if you're like, I'm just a lighting guy. I'm only doing my light thing. And if you only hang things on the truss for yourself, and you only cable for yourself, and you don't think about the rest of the picture, then that's all you're going to be. You're going to be that sad lighting person in the corner by themselves.
Yeah, and you're going to wind up like it happened to me once, where I had a very complex rig in a convention center, and I had put breakouts on every truss so that we can bring them down one by one at dismantle. And at the end of the gig, realized that there was one 200-foot U-ground cable that was going through the whole rig that the video guys passed through at the last minute.
Right.
So, the guys wound up with 4 50-foot extensions.
Wow.
Yeah, I was definitely not going to make the thing so complex to have to bring down the whole rig at once. I mean, it didn't make sense. Anyway, what you're saying there, all the good advice that you're giving there, that's gold. And it's something I like to tell people, is that if you aspire in becoming a light board operator or a sound guy or whatever it is you're looking at, I figure do your job properly, have a great attitude and all that, and as soon as you have some spare time, spot the guy who's doing what you want to do, go talk to him, ask, or a guy or girl, go ask questions. I mean, 99.9 times out of 100, you'll find somebody who's passionate and who wants to share, who'll be more than happy to answer questions. Once in a while, you'll get the guy who doesn't care about anybody and does his own thing and doesn't want to talk. That it's pretty rare. I mean, most of us are passionate and we love to share, and we and I'm so happy. Sometimes I'll have a board operator being mentioned in a gala or something by somebody who won a prize or a Juno or whatever it is, say, well, I want to thank my crew, and then they start thanking people, and hey, I trained that guy,
Yep.
It's such a great
Yeah.
feeling. It's like, okay, man, I gave that guy a chance, and look where he is today. So
Yep.
it's a great feeling.
My other big advice to lighting designers, and I've said this to a couple of my proteges, is, I mean, you can program with hundreds of moving lights in Capture. You can program with universes upon universes. You can take up as many parameters as you want. But sometimes the coolest gigs are like 4 lights.
Yep.
Like the size, everyone wants to do the big shows. And the big shows are massive and they're complicated and they have time, like there's so much there. And sometimes that is the coolest gig. But most of the time it's not. And most realistic expectations is, like, there's nothing wrong with doing lights for, with 24K of pars and 4 movers, man. Like, that's still a great show. That's still, like, really cool to do. I mean, whether you're doing lights at the Phoenix or the Horseshoe or at History or any of these big clubs in Toronto, like, the show is as good as you make it with the tools that you have. And if you say you need hundreds of lights to make something happen, I'm not really confident in what you can do. You can do the most with 4 par cans, then you can with 100, right?
Yeah. You remind me of one gig. I was doing a corporate gig where I had a pretty good rig, and there was this Beatles tribute band that comes on. And so I asked the producer, I said, okay, what era are we doing? I mean, are we doing Sgt. Pepper, or are we doing, the black suit and tie? He says, well, we're doing the beginning, the black suit and tie. I said, fine. So I had 1 light cue. I had 4 Mac 250s, one on each member of the band, shut everything else off. As if there were four follow spots that aren't moving on each member of the band. The result was as if we switched to black and white.
Yep.
It was just
that would
crazy.
Have been amazing.
Yeah. I mean, everybody had the shivers, and it was like the stupidest light cue I've ever done, but it really worked.
We were doing a fashion show for a corporate event, and we built this massive rectangular truss in the middle, and this carpet, like this, the runway runs. It's lined with Studio Spot 575s, high-end fixtures.
Yeah.
This is, again, way, way back.
Yeah, they were cool.
It does know them. Oh, yeah, they're great. They're color mixing. They were pretty punchy, actually.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends who works for Adamson now always say that he's like, I figured out how amazing of a lighting person Fox was when, at doors, they wanted the lights to follow from the start of the carpet to the center square with the moving lights. Mm-hmm. And instead of like every light guy going, there's no way, I said, all right, I can do that. And on a Pearl 2000, I'm like, okay. And then I sat there and I followed them using pan and tilt 140 feet.
Wow.
With 12 studio spots. And that was the cool moment of like, whoa.
Yeah, that's I can't tell you how it's done on a Pearl because I haven't worked enough on a Pearl. But I used to do it with a CompuLight Saber.
Yep.
Where you were able to map out, you'd make your 4 corners, you'd program your 4 corners with all your lights, and then you'd grab one, and then there was this function called follow the leader.
Oh,
so
cool.
all your other lights would rely on the first one, and then make their own calculations within the grid. And they'd all, on a skating rink, it was amazing. You could use all your moving lights.
Oh, yeah, that'd be amazing on a skating rink, for sure.
Yeah, and
I'd never seen that feature.
Ah, man. Have you ever worked on CompuLight consoles?
Not enough. I know Brad Wagg was a big proponent of them, the Vector and a couple other ones, but I've touched one, I think, twice.
Yeah, well, it's a complicated board, but if you spend enough time on it, you get to learn all the bits and pieces, and it's an amazing. It was an amazing board because I don't think you can find a working one anymore, or maybe in a museum or something. But I mean, there were features on that were just amazing, but it was a little more complicated because you're working with numbers, you're not working with graphics. So
Yeah.
it's a bit more complicated, but you could accomplish some fantastic stuff with that. So yeah, so you managed to do it on a Pearl, man. You'll have to tell me one of these days how you did that.
Oh, I was literally just using dials and ensuring that so to do it, it's almost like magic, right? So all you do is, because you've got the towers all following. I didn't even use pallets. It was so the only pallet I had was everything at the start, and then I just used the encoder wheels to pull. And all you do is you just made sure that the pan and tilt settings for the studio spots were all the same, so it would follow in. And that's one of the things that I because of that and a couple other things, the first piece of advice that I give to new techs, I'm like, okay, you roll into a venue, you put everything up, you turn it all on, you grab every one of your fixtures, and you turn your tilt wheel halfway one way. Then you figure out which lights aren't the way they're supposed to, and you fix that. Then you do it with pan, and you make sure all your pan matches. Because if you get 3 hours into programming and discover that 2 fixtures out of 6 have different pan or tilt inverted, you've just wasted 3 hours of programming.
Yeah, happened to me.
Oh no, we've all done it. We've all done it. But it's now one of those am I outputting the right DMX to the right ports? Yep, great. Do all of my lights move the same way? Yep. Okay, great. Now I can program.
Yeah.
But if you don't check those first, you've already skipped enough steps that you're gonna run yourself into a corner somewhere, right?
Yeah, indeed. Fox, it's been a great interview.
Thanks, Cloud. It was great talking to you.
I'm gonna have to go.
Yep.
But listen, it was really great. I'm very happy that you have accepted to do this. It's gonna be a great episode.
Thank you very much for this. Yeah, I can't wait. This is great. I
Amazing.
really appreciate it.
So yeah, I'll edit. Not much to edit. I mean, it's pretty much gonna go live, but I'll let you know when it's online.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time, and we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon. I'll let you know when I'm in Montreal. Thanks, Claude.
Hey, yeah, please do. Please do.
I will. Cheers.
Take care, man.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Backstage Cowboys podcast is brought to you by AVL Media Group and Avolights, who make the best lighting consoles in the world. If you live in Canada, you now have access to the Avolights Academy online learning platform. The cost is $229, and that includes an editor Avo key delivered directly to your door. Head on over to BackstageCowboys.com and click on the Avolights Academy logo to get all the details.